Have you ever noticed something strange? Some men barely say anything, yet women remember them for weeks. Not because they were the loudest in the room, not because they showed off, not because they tried too hard. In fact, it's usually the opposite. They were calm, quiet, almost still. And somehow that stillness stays in a woman's mind. Why? Because most men never learn one simple habit. A habit that costs nothing, requires no money, no status, no perfect looks. Yet once you develop it, your presence alone begins to change the atmosphere around you. Women start feeling something different when you're near. They may not even be able to explain it, but they feel it. And here is the uncomfortable truth most men never realize. They sabotage their own attraction every single day without even knowing it. Not because they are bad people, but because they react to life in ways that quietly destroy their image. They react too quickly, they speak too fast, they try too hard to prove themselves, and when pressure appears, their emotions take control. But there is another way to live, a quieter way, a stronger way. It comes from a philosophy that has existed for more than 2,000 years, a philosophy practiced by warriors, leaders, thinkers, a philosophy that teaches one powerful skill: mastering your response to life. This philosophy is called Stoicism. Now, when many people hear that word, they imagine something boring, ancient books, old philosophers, ideas that have nothing to do with modern life. But the truth is the opposite. Stoicism is incredibly practical. In fact, it might be one of the most powerful psychological advantages a man can develop today. Because here is the reality. Most men are controlled by their emotions. Something small happens and they immediately react. Someone disagrees with them, they become defensive. Something goes wrong, they lose their temper. Plans fall apart, frustration takes over. They let the outside world control their internal state. And women notice this more than men realize. Women are extremely sensitive to emotional stability, not because they are analyzing every detail consciously, but because human beings instinctively look for safety and reliability in others. Think about it. Imagine two men standing in the same room. The first man reacts to everything. If someone makes a joke, he forces laughter. If something awkward happens, he becomes nervous. If a small problem appears, frustration shows immediately on his face. Now imagine the second man. He notices everything, but he doesn't react impulsively. His posture stays relaxed, his voice remains steady. His energy doesn't change just because the situation becomes uncomfortable. He observes, he thinks, then he responds calmly. Which man feels stronger? Which man feels more stable? Which man feels like someone who can handle life? Women instinctively feel the difference, because calmness under pressure signals something very powerful. It signals control. Not control over others, but control over yourself. And that is rare, extremely rare. Picture a simple situation. You're at a social gathering. People are talking, laughing, moving around. Suddenly, something unexpected happens. Maybe someone says something awkward. Maybe the conversation becomes tense. Maybe the energy in the room shifts. Watch carefully what most men do in that moment. They panic internally. Their body language changes. They start talking too much to fill the silence. They laugh nervously. They try to force the situation back to normal. But a stoic man behaves differently. He doesn't rush to fix the moment. He doesn't panic. He simply remains calm, present, grounded. His breathing stays steady. His body language stays relaxed. He allows the moment to exist without trying to escape it. And something interesting happens. People begin to feel comfortable around him, because calm energy is contagious. When one person remains composed, others unconsciously relax as well. Women notice this immediately. They feel it. This man is not controlled by the environment. The environment does not shake him. And that signals something deep in human psychology: strength, reliability, emotional security. Now, here is something important to understand. Stoicism does not mean suppressing emotions. It doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean pretending nothing affects you. That is a misunderstanding. True Stoicism means something much more powerful. It means choosing your response instead of reacting automatically. The average man reacts. The Stoic man responds. And that small difference changes everything. Because when you stop reacting to every inconvenience, you begin to develop a presence that feels solid, stable, unshakable. People begin to trust you more, respect you more, and yes, women feel more attracted to you. Not because you're trying to impress them, but because calmness under pressure creates a quiet form of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever had a moment where your emotions took control and afterwards you wished you had handled it differently? Maybe you became angry too quickly. Maybe you said something you didn't mean. Maybe frustration made the situation worse. Almost every man has experienced this, and the problem is not the emotion itself. The problem is lack of control over the response. This is exactly what Stoicism teaches you to master. Not the world, not other people, but yourself. And once you begin practicing this, your entire presence changes. But understanding the idea is only the first step, because knowing Stoicism and actually living it are two completely different things.
Understanding Stoicism is one thing. Living it is something completely different. Many men hear the idea of emotional control and immediately think it sounds good. But when real life begins to test them, they forget everything. A small inconvenience happens, someone says something disrespectful, plans collapse, and suddenly the calm disappears. This is where Stoicism truly begins, not in comfortable moments, but in uncomfortable ones. Because the core principle of Stoicism is very simple. Focus only on what you can control. Everything else is noise. At first, that idea sounds obvious, but most people spend their entire lives doing the opposite. They try to control things that are completely outside their power, other people's opinions, unexpected events, situations that have already happened. And every time reality doesn't match their expectations, frustration grows. But Stoic thinking changes this completely. It separates life into two categories: things you control and things you don't. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control other people's moods. You cannot control every situation that appears in your life. But there is one thing that always remains within your power: your response. And that is where real strength begins. Imagine this situation. You're on a date. Everything seems to be going well at first. Then suddenly, something awkward happens. Maybe she checks her phone. Maybe the conversation becomes quiet. Maybe something you say doesn't land well. Most men panic in this moment. Their mind starts racing. They try to fix the silence quickly. They begin talking too much. Or worse, they become visibly nervous. But a man who practices Stoicism behaves differently. He pauses. Not a long, dramatic pause, just a brief moment. He breathes slowly. He allows the moment to exist without rushing to repair it. And then he responds calmly. Maybe he changes the subject naturally. Maybe he smiles and continues the conversation. Maybe he simply lets the silence breathe for a few seconds. This small difference changes the entire energy of the situation, because emotional discipline is rare, extremely rare. Most people are slaves to their immediate reactions, but the Stoic man creates space between the event and his response, and inside that space, he chooses how to act. That is power. Now think about something in your own life. Have you ever met someone who stays calm even when everything around them becomes chaotic? A person who doesn't raise their voice, a person who doesn't panic, a person who simply observes and then acts with clarity. Being around that person feels different.
You trust them more. You feel safer around them. Their presence stabilizes the environment. Women experience the same psychological effect. A calm man becomes an emotional anchor, not because he tries to be impressive, but because his energy communicates something powerful. Nothing around me controls my inner state, and that kind of stability is deeply attractive. Because life itself is unpredictable. Challenges appear without warning, plans fail, stress appears. When a woman senses that a man remains steady through these moments, she begins to see him differently, not as someone reacting to life, but as someone capable of handling it. This is where Stoicism begins transforming attraction, not through words, but through behavior. However, Stoicism requires practice. You don't suddenly wake up one morning with perfect emotional control. It develops slowly, moment by moment, situation by situation. The first step is awareness. You begin noticing when your emotions start rising: anger, frustration, impatience. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause, you breathe, you observe the feeling instead of obeying it. And something interesting happens. The emotion begins to lose its power, because emotions grow stronger when they control your actions. But when you observe them calmly, they begin to fade. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You start responding with intention instead of impulse. Now imagine applying this to daily life. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Most people react instantly. Anger, horn, frustration. But the Stoic man notices the impulse and lets it pass, because he understands something important. His peace is more valuable than the moment. Or imagine someone criticizes you. Most men become defensive immediately. They argue, they explain, they try to protect their ego. But the Stoic man listens first. He evaluates the criticism calmly. If it's useful, he learns from it. If it's useless, he ignores it. No emotional explosion, no unnecessary drama, just clarity. Over time, this discipline creates something powerful, a stable inner world. And once that stability becomes natural, people begin to feel it when they're around you. They may not understand why, but they sense it. You move differently, you speak differently, you react differently. And that difference quietly separates you from the majority of men. Because most men live in reaction mode. But Stoicism teaches you to live in response mode, and that single shift changes the way the world experiences you. But there is still one final step, because emotional control alone is not the full power of Stoicism. The final stage is something deeper, something that transforms not only how you react to life, but how you perceive it. And once you reach that stage, your presence becomes something most people rarely encounter.
There is one final stage of Stoicism that most men never reach. Not because it is complicated, but because it requires something many people avoid: perspective. Real Stoicism is not just about staying calm in difficult moments. It is about understanding life differently. When your perspective changes, your reactions naturally change with it. Most people move through life believing everything that happens to them is a personal attack. A bad day feels like the world is against them. A disagreement feels like disrespect. A setback feels like failure. And because they see events this way, their emotions become intense. But Stoicism invites you to step back, to look at life from a wider view. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic mind asks a different question: "What can this teach me?" This simple shift changes everything. Because once you stop seeing every challenge as a threat, you stop reacting with frustration. You begin responding with understanding. Imagine a difficult situation at work. Maybe someone criticizes your idea. Most people immediately feel attacked. They defend themselves, they argue, their ego takes control. But the Stoic approach is different. You listen, you examine the criticism calmly,
If there is truth in it, you improve. If there is none, you move forward without resentment. No wasted energy, no emotional chaos, just growth. Now think about how rare that behavior is. Most people react emotionally. Very few remain composed and thoughtful. And that difference creates a powerful presence. People begin to see you as someone grounded, someone who cannot easily be shaken. Women feel this strongly, because emotional maturity is deeply attractive. A man who understands his emotions but is not controlled by them feels safe to be around. He doesn't create drama, he doesn't explode over small problems, he doesn't allow temporary discomfort to destroy his mood. Instead, he brings calm energy into the room, and calm energy has influence. But Stoicism teaches one more important lesson, a lesson many men resist at first. You cannot control how others feel about you. You cannot force attraction. You cannot force respect. And trying to force these things usually creates the opposite effect. The more you chase approval, the more it slips away. But when you focus on mastering yourself instead, something unexpected happens. Respect appears naturally. Attraction appears naturally, because people are drawn to individuals who are comfortable within themselves. Think about the men who seem to leave a lasting impression on others. They rarely try to impress, they simply live with quiet confidence. They move slowly, they speak thoughtfully, they listen carefully. Their energy is calm but powerful, and when they enter a room, people notice, not because they demand attention, but because their presence feels steady. That is the quiet power of Stoicism. It is not loud, it does not seek validation, it does not perform for applause, it simply exists with clarity and discipline. And over time, this mindset begins to transform everything. You stop chasing reactions, you stop trying to control every outcome, you stop wasting energy on things that do not matter. Instead, you focus on becoming stronger internally, more patient, more thoughtful, more balanced. And when that happens, your presence changes in ways people can feel. You become calmer under pressure, more stable in uncertainty, more confident in silence. And that confidence does not come from ego, it comes from self-mastery. The ancient Stoic philosophers believed something simple but powerful. A man who controls himself cannot be controlled by the world. And once you understand that idea deeply, life becomes quieter, not empty, but peaceful. You begin moving through situations without unnecessary tension. You speak when needed. You stay silent when silence is better. You act with intention instead of impulse. And in that quiet discipline, something interesting begins to happen. People trust you more. They respect your stability. And sometimes, without even understanding why, they feel drawn to your presence. Not because you tried to impress them, but because calm strength always leaves a mark. The kind of mark that lingers in someone's mind long after the moment has passed.